Chapter 1. The Arena of Humiliation. Aaron Cade blinked hard against the piercing light as the cell door hissed open, its edges glowing faintly with an energy field. The scent of ozone and burnt metal wafted in, making her throat tighten. A towering figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, its translucent exoskeleton glinting under the harsh light. The alien's voice, guttural and sharp, grated through her translator implant. "Move, human. The crowd waits." She glanced down at her shaking hands, calloused from years of mining work. No weapons, no armor, just her jumpsuit, smudged with oil and dust from the cargo hold where she'd been working when the slavers attacked. "Where am I going?" she asked, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. The alien's compound eyes reflected her image back at her, small, vulnerable, expendable. To entertain, the arena was a monstrous amphitheater carved into the side of a jagged cliff. Thousands of aliens from dozens of species crowded the stands, their voices a cacophony of jeers and laughter. Hovering drones buzzed overhead, projecting the spectacle onto massive holoscreens that flickered with her image. Aaron Cade, unarmed and unarmored, standing in the middle of the arena's harsh metallic floor. The announcer's voice boomed, the words rolling out in the galactic trade language. "Behold the human, a species of weak flesh and brittle bone, unfit for the glory of combat." The crowd erupted in mocking cheers, and Aaron's jaw tightened. She scanned her surroundings, noting the floating platforms scattered around the arena, each glowing faintly with anti-gravity fields. Above them, a shimmering energy barrier kept her, and the fight, contained. Behind her, a calm voice crackled to life in her ear. "You're going to die," it said, matter-of-factly. Aaron flinched. "Who the hell are you?" "Your translator AI. Call me Quinn. Don't worry. I'll make sure you understand every insult before you're obliterated." She snorted, more out of defiance than humor. "Great." A snarky eulogy on demand. A gate at the far end of the arena rumbled open, releasing her opponent. A towering alien clad in gleaming black armor, wielding an energy blade that hummed with menace. Its scaled hide shimmered with embedded cybernetics, and its four glowing eyes fixed on her with predatory glee. "Introducing Zarek Threll, conqueror of 12 systems," the announcer bellowed. Zarek's blade sliced through the air, leaving a trail of crackling energy. He pointed it at Aaron, his voice amplified for the crowd. "Do you even know how to fight, human? Or do you only scavenge and beg for scraps?" The audience roared with laughter, but Aaron's mind raced. She wasn't a soldier. She barely knew how to throw a punch. But she was an engineer. "Quinn," she whispered, her eyes darting to the floating platforms and the shimmering energy barriers. "What's the structural integrity of this place?" Quinn's tone shifted, intrigued. "Are you seriously thinking about?" "Just answer the question." After a brief pause, Quinn replied, "The platforms are stabilized by localized anti-grav emitters. Knock one offline, and it'll drop like a rock. Energy barriers are tougher, fully redundant systems. But the arena floor, that's patchwork. Might as well be duct tape holding it together." Zarek charged, his blade carving arcs of light through the air. Aaron darted to the side, her boots slipping slightly on the smooth floor. He was fast, too fast for her to outrun for long. She needed a plan. A floating platform hovered nearby, about 8 feet off the ground. Aaron sprinted toward it, using her momentum to leap and grab its edge. Her muscles strained as she hauled herself up, panting as Zarek's blade slashed through empty air below her. The crowd booed, unimpressed by her evasive tactics. "Quinn," she muttered, catching her breath. "How do I knock this thing offline?" "Control panels underneath." "But you'll have to." She didn't let him finish. Swinging her legs over the edge, she slid down to the platform's underside. Her fingers found a small access hatch, and with a quick pull, it popped open, revealing a mess of wires and circuits. Zarek roared below, his blade striking the platform and causing it to shudder. Aaron worked quickly, yanking wires and rerouting connections with a practiced efficiency. Sparks flew, and the platform lurched violently. With a final heave, She pushed off and dropped to the ground just as the anti-grav emitter failed. The platform crashed onto the arena floor, sending up a cloud of dust and debris. Zarek staggered, momentarily disoriented. The crowd fell silent, their jeers replaced by murmurs of confusion. Erin didn't wait. She sprinted toward a structural beam exposed by the impact, ducking behind it as Zarek recovered. Her hands trembled as she pried open another panel. "Quinn," she said through gritted teeth, "if I reroute the power from this beam, what happens to the floor's stability?" "Best case scenario?" Quinn replied. "Localized collapse. Worst case? You both fall into the power core below." She grimaced. "Good enough?" Zarek's heavy footsteps pounded closer. Erin twisted a final connection, and the floor beneath her buckled. With a deafening groan, the section gave way, and Zarek tumbled forward, his weight dragging him into the newly formed pit. He caught the edge at the last second, his claws scraping for purchase. Erin stood over him, dust coating her jumpsuit and face. The audience was deathly silent as she stared into Zarek's blazing eyes. "You think we're weak?" she said, her voice steady. "Then maybe you shouldn't have underestimated us." With a sharp kick, she sent him plunging into the darkness. The arena erupted in chaos. Aliens screamed, drones buzzed wildly, and Erin stood alone, breathing hard. "Quinn," she muttered, wiping sweat from her brow. "Next time, remind me to stay on the ship." "Noted," the AI replied. Above her, the holoscreens flickered, replaying the moment Zarek fell. But Erin wasn't looking. She was already scanning the arena for her next move. Chapter 2. The arena's chaos spread like wildfire, a storm of blaring sirens, flashing lights, and panicked alien voices. Erin Cade crouched low behind a toppled debris pillar, her breath shallow. The taste of metallic dust lingered in her mouth, and her ears rang from the collapsing floor. "Quinn," she whispered, wiping the grit from her face, "tell me you've got an escape plan." The AI's voice clicked in her ear, steady but edged with urgency. "Define escape. If you mean surviving the next 10 minutes, then maybe. If you mean leaving this planet alive, well, that's optimistic." Erin rolled her eyes. "Just give me options." She peeked around the pillar. Drones darted across the arena like angry hornets, scanning for her. Above, the announcer's voice cut through the cacophony, no longer mocking, but frantic. "The human has disrupted the arena protocols. Security teams, apprehend her immediately." A gate at the far end of the arena slid open, and Erin's heart sank. 3 hulking guards, each clad in plated armor that shimmered with an iridescent glow, stormed in. Their reptilian forms moved with predatory precision, energy weapons humming in their grasp. "Options are narrowing," Quinn chimed. Erin's mind raced. She spotted a service hatch embedded in the arena wall, half hidden behind a pile of rubble. It was her only chance. "I'm heading for that hatch," she muttered, tightening the straps on her boots. "Bad idea," Quinn replied. "It likely leads into the maintenance tunnels. Dark, cramped, and full of things that want to eat you. Better than staying here." The first guard spotted her as she bolted from her cover. "Target acquired," its guttural voice boomed, and the arena erupted with weapons fire. The air sizzled as plasma bolts struck the ground behind her, leaving charred craters in their wake. Erin zigzagged, her boots skidding on the arena's scorched surface. Her pulse thundered in her ears, each step a fight against the overwhelming weight of exhaustion. She reached the hatch and yanked at the handle. It didn't budge. "Of course," she muttered, glancing back. The guards were closing in, their glowing visors locking onto her position. "Quinn, override this thing." The AI sighed theatrically. "Hold, please. Hacking ancient alien tech isn't exactly a quick process. Faster would be great." A guard raised its weapon, the barrel glowing ominously. Erin threw herself to the side as the bolt struck where she'd been standing, the heat singing her arm. The hatch finally hissed open. Erin scrambled inside and slammed it shut behind her. The maintenance tunnels were as grim as Quinn had warned. Dim, flickering lights cast eerie shadows along the narrow corridor, and the air reeked of mildew and decay. Pipes lined the walls, dripping in unidentifiable green liquid. Cozy, Erin muttered, clutching her side where a bruise was already forming. You're not alone, Quinn warned. She froze, straining her ears. The faint clatter of claws on metal echoed down the corridor, accompanied by a low, guttural growl. Great. What now? Local fauna, Quinn replied. Think of them as the arena's natural pest control. They're not fans of trespassers. Erin's grip tightened on the metal rod she'd scavenged from the hatch. The growls grew louder, and a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the darkness ahead. Quinn, that would be nice. A small beam from her wristband activated, illuminating the creature. It resembled a wolf, but its body was covered in slick, chitinous armor, and its teeth gleamed like razors. Oh, you're lovely, Erin muttered. The creature lunged. Erin barely had time to react. She swung the rod with all her strength, striking the creature's side. The impact sent a shudder up her arm, but the beast barely flinched. It snarled, claws raking against the floor as it circled her. Suggestions, Quinn? Run. That thing's exoskeleton can withstand most blunt force trauma. Helpful. The creature pounced again, and Erin ducked, the rod swinging upward in a desperate arc. This time, it struck an exposed joint near the neck. The beast yelped, stumbling back, and Erin didn't wait to see if it recovered. She sprinted down the corridor, her chest heaving. The tunnel twisted and turned, each step taking her deeper into the labyrinth. The growls faded, but new sounds replaced them, mechanical whirs and the faint hum of energy fields. The corridor opened into a cavernous maintenance hub, its walls lined with towering machines that pulsed with a dull blue light. Erin slowed, her eyes scanning the room. It was eerily quiet, save for the steady thrum of machinery. This is it, Quinn said. What is? The power relay for the arena's systems. You could overload it, take down the energy barriers, and cause enough chaos to cover your escape. Erin frowned. And probably blow myself up in the process? Well, yes, there's that. She approached the relay, a massive console covered in blinking lights and alien symbols. Her hands hovered over the controls, uncertainty gnawing at her. This is insane, she muttered. You're out of options, Quinn replied. The guards will find you soon. Make a choice. Erin exhaled sharply and began to work. The symbols were incomprehensible, but her engineering instincts kicked in. Wires were wires, circuits were circuits, no matter the species. A distant roar echoed down the tunnel, guards closing in. Her fingers moved faster. The relay began to hum louder, its lights flickering erratically. Warning, Quinn said. You've got about 30 seconds before this thing goes critical. Then I'd better move. Erin turned and ran, the relay's hum rising to a deafening crescendo. Behind her, the hub erupted in a blinding flash, the shock waves slamming her into the ground. The air filled with the sound of shattering metal and the acrid stench of burning circuits. Dazed, Erin pushed herself up, her ears ringing. In the distance, the energy barriers around the arena flickered and failed. The tunnel shook as alarms blared. Erin staggered to her feet, adrenaline pushing her forward. Quinn, she gasped. What's the fastest way out? The AI's tone was dry but determined. Follow the chaos, Erin. Follow the chaos. Chapter 3. The cacophony of alarms echoed through the shattered corridors, each wail slicing through Erin's pounding headache. She leaned against a charred wall, the acrid scent of smoke filling her lungs. Sparks rained from severed wires above, painting her sweat-streaked face in fleeting flashes of light. Quinn, she rasped, clutching her ribs. How much further? The exit is approximately 400 meters ahead, the AI replied, its voice unusually calm. Assuming you're not incinerated or torn apart before reaching it. Always the optimist, Erin muttered, pushing off the wall. Her boots crunched over broken glass and debris as she trudged forward. Every step was a battle against the exhaustion dragging at her limbs. The blast had done more than disrupt the arena's systems. It had unleashed chaos. Erin froze at the sound of approaching footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, and too organized to be scavenging beasts. Guards, Quinn whispered. Aaron ducked into a shadowed alcove, her heart hammering in her chest. The tunnel's dim lighting cast jagged shadows across the walls, and she pressed herself against the cold metal surface. 3 armored figures marched past, their visors glowing ominously. They communicated in clipped tones, their language a series of guttural clicks and hisses. Aaron couldn't understand the words, but the tension in their posture was universal. "They're scanning for survivors," Quinn said. "And they're thorough." "Noted," Aaron whispered back. The moment the guards turned a corner, Aaron slipped out of the alcove and continued down the tunnel. The faint hum of power returned as she approached a junction. "Left or right?" she asked. "Right," Quinn replied. "But B." A deafening roar cut off the AI's warning. Aaron spun around, her eyes widening. The chitinous wolf beast from earlier barreled into view, its glowing eyes fixed on her. "Oh, come on!" Aaron yelled, sprinting down the right corridor. The beast's claws scraped against the metal floor as it gave chase, its snarls reverberating off the walls. Aaron's muscles screamed in protest, but adrenaline kept her moving. "Quinn, any ideas?" "I recommend running faster." "Not helpful." The corridor opened into a cavernous space filled with towering machinery and exposed pipelines. Aaron spotted a broken walkway suspended above the floor, a potential escape route. With a burst of energy, she leaped onto a lower platform and scrambled up the twisted metal supports. The beast followed, its powerful limbs propelling it upward with terrifying ease. Aaron reached the walkway and turned, her chest heaving. The beast crouched below, ready to pounce. She scanned the area, her eyes locking onto a dangling cable sparking with electricity. "Quinn, what happens if I drop live wires on this thing?" "Best case scenario? It's fried. Worst case? You create an even angrier monster." "I'll take those odds." As the beast lunged, Aaron grabbed the cable and yanked it free. Sparks exploded in a blinding shower, and the creature howled as the currents surged through its body. Its armored hide crackled and smoked before it collapsed in a twitching heap. Aaron dropped the cable, her arms trembling. "That better be dead." "Mostly," Quinn said. The respite was short-lived. The ground trembled, and Aaron's stomach dropped as an explosion echoed from the tunnel behind her. "What now?" "Guards have breached the central junction," Quinn said. "They're bringing heavy artillery." "Fantastic," Aaron muttered, sliding down the walkway and sprinting toward the exit. The final stretch of the tunnel loomed ahead, its reinforced doors partially ajar. Beyond them, Aaron glimpsed the pale light of the outside world. Her escape was within reach. She wasn't alone. A towering figure emerged from the shadows, its frame encased in sleek, black armor. Unlike the brutish guards, this one moved with lethal precision. Its helmet bore a crimson visor that locked onto Aaron with unsettling focus. "Target identified," the figure said, its voice mechanical and cold. Aaron skidded to a halt, gripping the metal rod tighter. "Who the hell are you supposed to be?" The figure didn't answer. It raised a weapon, a sleek rifle humming with barely contained energy. "Aaron, move!" Quinn shouted. Aaron dove to the side as the weapon discharged, the blast vaporizing the wall behind her. She rolled to her feet, heart pounding. "You're persistent, I'll give you that," she said, circling the figure. The figure stepped closer, its movements deliberate. "You've caused enough damage. Surrender, and your death will be painless." Tempting offer, but I'll pass. The figure fired again, and Aaron darted behind a support column. Her mind raced, searching for an opening. She spotted a ruptured pipe overhead, steam hissing from its jagged edges. "Quinn, what's in that pipe?" "Pressurized coolant. Extremely volatile. Perfect." Aaron grabbed a jagged piece of debris and hurled it at the pipe. The metal struck true, and the pipe burst, releasing a torrent of freezing vapor. The figure staggered, its armor frosting over as the coolant engulfed it. "Go!" Quinn urged. Aaron bolted for the exit, the figure's muffled roars echoing behind her. She stumbled into the open air, collapsing onto the rocky ground. The sky above was a muted gray, the horizon lined with jagged peaks. For the first time in hours, Erin breathed deeply, the crisp air filling her lungs. "You made it," Quinn said. "Barely," Erin replied, her voice shaking. The ground rumbled, and Erin looked back. The armored figure emerged from the tunnel, its movements slower, but no less menacing. Erin forced herself to stand, her legs unsteady. "This isn't over," she muttered. "No," Quinn said. "It's just beginning." Chapter 4. Stand or Fall. The air was sharp with the tang of ozone, and Erin's chest heaved as she watched the towering armored figure step from the tunnel. Its movements were sluggish, frost still clinging to its joints, but its crimson visor burned with unyielding determination. "Quinn," Erin whispered, steadying herself against a jagged boulder. "How much of that coolant hit its systems?" "Not enough to incapacitate," the AI replied. "I estimate a 47% reduction in efficiency." Not exactly reassuring. The figure raised its weapon, a low hum signaling another energy blast. Erin dove as a searing bolt obliterated the ground where she had stood. The impact sent shards of rock flying, one grazing her cheek. "Erin, your chances of survival without a plan are—" "Quinn, I don't need the odds," she snapped, scrambling for cover. "I need options." The figure advanced, its heavy steps crunching the rocky terrain. Erin peeked from behind her boulder, her mind racing. The battlefield around her was barren, save for jagged outcroppings and scattered debris from the facility. "Any chance we can use its power source against it?" she asked. "Unlikely," Quinn replied. "Its core is heavily shielded. Direct confrontation remains ill-advised." "Great. Guess I'll just wing it then." The figure fired again, forcing Erin to sprint to another piece of cover. Her muscles screamed in protest, and she could feel the burn of exertion in her lungs. Still, she couldn't stop. "Erin," Quinn said, "if you can lure it closer to the ravine, there's a 62% probability it will overcommit." "Overcommit?" "Fall into the chasm," Quinn clarified. "Why didn't you lead with that?" "You appeared preoccupied." Erin scanned the area, spotting the ravine Quinn had mentioned, a jagged scar in the earth, its depths shrouded in shadow. A plan formed in her mind, risky but better than waiting to be vaporized. "All right, tin can," she muttered, gripping the metal rod she still carried. "Let's see how good you really are." She stepped from her cover and waved the rod overhead. "Hey, over here!" The figure turned, its weapon lowering slightly in what might have been surprise. "You want me? Come and get me!" Erin shouted. The armored figure charged, closing the distance with alarming speed. Erin bolted toward the ravine, her heart pounding as she calculated the timing. The ground trembled under the figure's relentless pursuit, and she could feel the heat of its weapon charging again. "Quinn, how close?" 10 meters. 8. 6. Now! Erin dropped to the ground, sliding across the gravel just as the figure lunged. Its momentum carried it forward, past Erin, and to the edge of the ravine. For a brief moment, it teetered, its arms flailing for balance. But it didn't fall. "Erin, the plan has failed," Quinn said flatly. "No kidding," she snapped, scrambling to her feet. The figure turned, its visor locking onto her once more. Erin's mind raced, desperate for an alternative. She spotted a cluster of jagged rocks jutting from the ravine's edge, their tips sharp enough to pierce even reinforced armor. "Quinn, can we destabilize those rocks?" "With sufficient force, yes," the AI replied. "Define sufficient." "More than you can generate, unaided." Erin gritted her teeth. "Then it's a good thing I'm not alone." She ran toward the figure, dodging another blast that scorched the ground behind her. The distance between them closed rapidly, and the figure raised an arm, its gauntlet glowing with lethal energy. At the last second, Erin dropped low, sliding between its legs. As she passed beneath, she swung the metal rod upward, slamming it into the back of the figure's knee joint. The impact made the figure stumble, its balance faltering. Erin didn't wait to see if it recovered. She sprinted to the unstable rocks and began striking them with the rod, each blow sending tremors through the ground. "Erin, it's approaching rapidly," Quinn warned. "Just a little more," she muttered, sweat pouring down her face. The figure charged again, But Erin didn't move. She raised the rod one final time and slammed it down with all her strength. The rocks gave way. With a deafening crack, the jagged spires collapsed, plunging into the ravine. The armored figure skidded to a halt, but it was too late. The ground beneath it crumbled, and it fell, its crimson visor fading as it disappeared into the abyss. Erin collapsed to her knees, her chest heaving. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the faint echo of debris settling far below. "Erin," Quinn said, "you've survived?" "Barely," she replied, wiping sweat from her brow. She sat there for a moment, staring at the edge of the ravine. The weight of everything she'd endured began to sink in, but there was no time for rest. "What's next?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "There's a settlement approximately 20 kilometers north," Quinn said. "They may have resources to aid you." Erin nodded and rose unsteadily to her feet. The journey ahead would be long and grueling, but she wasn't done fighting. Not yet. She turned away from the ravine and began walking, her resolve unshaken.